Two words often tossed around in competitive Pokemon are viable and optimal, often when it comes to specific Pokemon, strategies, or gimmicks. And I thought about this a lot when making my last video on a Shedinja that optimally runs 0 EVs and IVs. And that's the key word, optimally, because the team is not viable at all. So what's the difference? Well, let's start with some definitions. Merriam-Webster defines viable as having a reasonable chance at succeeding, and optimum as greatest degree attained or attainable under implied or specified conditions. Also, quick note, optimal tends to be used more than optimum, but the definition for optimum fits a little bit better for how it tends to be used within the Showdown community than optimal. And just more specifically when it comes to the sets of Pokemon runs, viable is whether you should run the Pokemon, at least if you want to win, and optimal is how you best run the Pokemon. So say on the 0 stats Shedinja team, the Shedinja having 0 stats was optimal, because for the role it was intended to fill, it was best for it to have 0 stats. However, Shedinja typically isn't a fantastic Pokemon, and should probably be switched out with another Pokemon. Of course, the whole team was bad, but that's besides the point. And actually, this reminds me of a post made on r/Stunfist. The person made a post asking for help with a specific team and the specific IVs and EVs and moves to give to the Pokemon on that team. Of course, they didn't want to actually change the Pokemon. They wanted the team to be more optimal with the Pokemon needed, but not necessarily more viable. And sometimes that's what it's like to use your favorite Pokemon. Yeah, Eevee may suck, but if you're going to use Eevee, you might as well use Eevee as optimally as you can. Well, best to give some other examples, I guess. Imagine if you and only you could use Arceus in Little Cup. Ignore the fact that the thought experiment is stupid. It's a thought experiment, not reality. Now, just about any Arceus set you run will be viable. You could run anything from Hyper Beam to Swift and win with no problem. You could run solely Refresh, Recycle, and Lepidberry and win by PP stalling. Even with no IVs and EVs, your Arceus is still decimating everything. Unless you use a set purposefully intending to lose, you won't. Even sets made to be terrible can win without a problem. Any of these sets are viable, but that doesn't mean they are optimal. An optimal set will be running a lot of priority with max attack and speed, and mainly focusing on countering fear strategies. Of course, there are also examples of sets that are optimal, but not viable. My Shedinja set is one example, but say for example you want to run a Pokemon using fear strategies. While not viable, there's optimal ways to do it. For example, you shouldn't use Rattata, as Tail fully outclasses it. Tail is both more viable and optimal than Rattata, though it's still not viable. And even then, not all fear Talos are optimal. Optimally, you want Scrappy, max attack and speed, with a speed boosting nature, with Endeavor, Quick Attack, and Pursuit. As far as I'm aware, the final move is not terribly important, though I'm not an expert on fear strategies. And just another thing to note, most sets that are viable are also optimal. Of course, Arceus in Little Cup is quite the exception, though having a good team and just randomly reducing the Pokemon's EVs by 4 will allow you to create a most likely viable, though unoptimal team. I wouldn't recommend this though, there really is no reason to do this. And this all sort of leads into the should I use my favorites debate of competitive Pokemon. And it's your choice. If you want to win, you may need to forego your favorites. But if you would rather play with your favorite Pokemon, you may want to focus on the optimal way to play that Pokemon, instead of the viable way to play. It's not necessarily wrong to play unoptimally and unviably, but if you want to win with your favorites, you might want to focus on playing the Pokemon optimally. And that's the thing, any Pokemon can be played optimally. In fact, there are very few Pokemon that I would say have just one optimal way to play them. Flashfire and Flame Body on Heatran are both optimal. They may work better on different teams in different circumstances, but neither is necessarily unoptimal. And even then, optimal is kind of more than just being the best. You may use an unoptimal team, but the Pokemon are all optimal. You could use a set on a Pokemon that is normally unoptimal, but in your team actually is optimal. It's quite nuanced, and what is optimal depends on the team, and a Pokemon's purpose on the team. Well, I thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't like the video, dislike it, and tell me what I can do better in the comments. Also, thank you all so much for getting the channel to so many subs, and for the massive amount of support on the last video. Anyways, see you later.